What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Highlight, a business podcast for business people. And today I'm really excited to share the highlight with a guy who's had a lot of spotlight on him, a professional public speaker, probably one of the most influential public speakers in my life, just because, I got the guy's book a couple years ago, and all of a sudden now we're speaking for High Beam Marketing, and I had to get the guy on the show. And today's guest is Grant Baldwin, entrepreneur and author. Grant, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining me.
Chandler, you're a neighbor. I'm excited to hang out with you, man. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. I wish I'd have gotten your address beforehand, because we could have just done this in person versus virtual, but it feels almost sacrilegious post-COVID doing things in person now. I don't know. I feel like we have to do it digitally. That's the new way, right?
It's the way it is. We're gonna be stuck with this for now.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I know a little bit of your background just from reading your book and some of your podcasts and things you got online, but I'd love for you to just take a minute and give everybody sort of the who you are and how you got into public speaking, man.
Yeah. So the nutshell is, if we go back in time, in high school, I was really involved in my local church, and my youth pastor had a really big impact in my life. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, that just seemed like a really cool, rewarding type of profession. He made a huge impact in my world, and I thought, if I could make the kind of impact in others' lives that he made in my life, that seemed fulfilling. And so that's kind of the path I was on. I went to Bible college, and then worked at a different local church for a little while as a youth pastor, and that gave me a lot of opportunities to speak. And speaking was one of those things I really enjoyed. I felt like I was decent at. I wanted to do more of, but I just didn't know, like, how does this world work? Like, at the time, this was 17, 18, 19 years ago or so, there weren't any books or podcasts or trainings or courses or resources on becoming a paid speaker. And so I found myself emailing other speakers, harassing other speakers, stalking them, can I pick your brain type stuff, and just trying to learn something, anything about it. And so I started learning a couple things here and there, started booking some gigs, and over the next several years, just built the momentum of being a speaker. And I got to a point where I was doing about 60, 70 gigs a year. And I had a lot of people who were asking me, like, hey, I want to be a speaker. How do I do that? And so I started doing some coaching and training around that. And that really evolved into what we do today with the Speaker Lab. So Speaker Lab's a training company for speakers who are either brand new or just getting started, don't know what they don't know, or people who've been at it for a little while and booking a lot of gigs and just want to figure out how do you continue to build out a business on that. But if you want to get booked and paid to speak, you have a message, or still trying to define and clarify what that message is, and you want to make an impact and income with speaking, that's what we do.
Man, that's pretty good. 60, 70 gigs a year. You might as well be one of these Nashville touring musicians we run into coffee shops here all the time. What was that like, having a family moving around that much? That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it was life on the road is it's fun at times, and it's just boring at times, and a lot of times you're just like, I just want to be home. It's very non-glamorous, non-sexy. The fun part of it is, like, yeah, I definitely got to, like, travel around and see parts of the country that most people never get to see in a lifetime, and been to 49 different states. Maine's the only one I'm missing right now. And I had spoken to thousands and thousands of people, and, signed autographs and take pictures. And it's just, that part of it's kind of fun, but also just like, yeah, I just want to sleep in my own bed. So there's definitely pros and cons to it.
I think it's fun. It's kind of like when we talk to a professional football player or something like that, right? They play 16, 17 games, I guess, now a year. Mm-hmm. And, they spend all year prepping for those 17 days, which is sort of, that's exactly what all of us do, I guess. It's fun to close a new client for us at High Beam, but, we're spending every single day prepping for that. So it's wild to go back and forth. Do you know the total number of people you've spoken in front of at this point?
Yeah, we used to calculate it. I mean, it's something around 500,000 in person live. So not through podcasts, not through webinars, not virtual, but like actually in person. Yeah, it was super fun. Like, there's some events where it was 8, 10, 13,000 people in an arena, and other events where there's 2 or 3 people there, and everything in between. And yeah, there is definitely something to the human element of being with and being in front of an audience and connecting with other people that you can't get through Zoom or through an email or through, whatever other form of communication, like you can just being in person.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk to people all the time about social media. It's kind of like digital public speaking in a weird way, but it's all virtual, and you don't. An impression comes back across the screen as like, oh, cool, this number went up or it went down, or somebody liked something, or there was engagement or whatever. And it's hard to, I think, emotionally connect with those numbers a lot of times as a human. And so I was just out the other night at Zany's in Nashville watching a show for the first time. And that was a great spot. Talking about public speaking. What was the guy's name? Oh, you're gonna put me on the spot. My wife bought me tickets for my birthday, so it was a surprise deal. But he was funny. I'll have to get you the name afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
But I ran into somebody there, and they were like, "Hey, man, been loving all the stuff you guys are putting out on social media." Da da da. And it was just nice to have that connection. So
Mm-hmm.
I could only imagine like actually going and speaking all the time, and people coming up afterwards being like, "Oh, that message really spoke to me," or like that really helped me and bailed me out. So that's cool. But I got to know the touchy-feely feel-good stuff is always great. And I think that's almost like an additional benefit that we get that ends up becoming the core benefit of really why we end up going to do that stuff. But as an entrepreneur, business owner, I've only got 24 hours in a day, and 28 of them are already booked up with all the different things I'm running and doing. So I got to know, like, if I'm going to consider adding public speaking to my marketing mix, like, what are your thoughts around that? Like, should I do it? Should I not? Like, does it just depend? What do you think?
Yeah, no, it definitely depends, because there's going to be people who, given the nature of their business and for them personally, kind of how they're wired, they are drawn to speaking. They love speaking. Not everybody that's the case, though. I love speaking. I love being on a stage. I don't. It's something I feel like I'm good at, and it's a gifting. And at the same time, my wife, for example, is like, I want nothing to do with that. Don't you ever call me up on stage. And everything in between. And like, again, it's not that one's better or worse than the other, but I know for me, one of the things I'm good at, and then she knows for her, one thing she's not good at and just doesn't enjoy, right? So if you're someone who's like, man, I really enjoy speaking, and if there's a way to incorporate this into my business, then by all means, like, you should absolutely pay attention to that. So there's a couple different ways you can kind of go about this. Like, speaking works really, really well for building relationships, for networking, for brand recognition, for building up credibility. Like, speaking is still one of those things that we look at, we view with a level of recognition and prestige, just kind of like the way that, if you meet a surgeon or a rocket scientist, you're just like, whoa, okay, that's kind of a big deal, like, oh, you're a speaker, oh, wow, like we just hold speakers in high esteem. And so if you're at an event and you are sitting in an audience listening to a speaker, there's some type of credibility that you associate with that speaker. And so there's something to be said for being a speaker at some of maybe your trade industry events, or maybe some local events, depending on, again, the nature of your business, what it is that you're selling or offering, just to build that brand and that recognition of credibility, knowledge, expertise that you have in your field. Another thing is that at the end of the day, whatever the type of business you're in, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And so when you are speaking, a lot of people have good BS detectors and radars and kind of determining, like, does this person know what they're talking about? Do I trust this person? Do I like this person? If I hired this person to help my business or in my family or my home or whatever, do I have confidence that they know what they're doing, that they would do a good job, that they would be professional? And again, it's hard to get a lot of that through an ad or through an email, and even though we send a lot of emails and we run a lot of ads, but there's nothing that compares to being together in person, and it just changes the dynamics of relationships. So there are a lot of speakers that we have worked with who've built very, very successful businesses and use speaking as the platform, as the channel and the medium to grow that business. So I'll give you a quick example. There was a speaker that we worked with I'll give you two examples. One was they do a lot of coaching, and they were generating $300,000-$400,000 a year in their coaching business, but the whole thing was built upon speaking for free at the right type of events where their ideal customer or client would gather. And so on paper, you'd be like, wait a second, you spoke at all these events for free. Like, what's the point of that? Are you losing money? It's like, no, like, they built their whole coaching practice based upon speaking at these right type of events. There's another lady I was talking to recently, one of our clients who is in Florida, and she does like identity theft protection for like high net worth individuals. Okay. And so that's kind of the service that she provides. And so she works with a lot of like family offices and wealth advisors and help investment bankers and that sort of thing, and helps their clients with their identity theft protection. Okay. So she was talking about like, hey, I'm trying to speak at a certain event, and they're only going to pay me, I don't remember what, $1,000 or something. Right. And she's like, is it worth it or not worth it? I said, okay, let's talk about this for a second. So, is your type of client going to be at this event? Yes. And I said, what's the lifetime value of a client worth to you? And she was talking about like tens of thousands of dollars, right? I said, okay, why don't you go do the event and then let me know what comes out of it. And so she came back and she's like, I actually picked up 5 new clients that was worth like over $100,000 in business for her. And I said, okay, which is more valuable, the $1,000 that you did or didn't get paid for this event, or the $100,000 in new business that was just generated for you. And so it was just like a light bulb moment for her of going from the mentality of like, oh, how do I get, instead of $1,000, how do I get $2,000, and yeah, like, yes, absolutely. You can have your cake and eat it too. Meaning like you can certainly charge more. And we can talk through that, but also realizing the value of, yeah, but speaking can drive big revenue and growth in my other business over here. And so there's definitely there's definitely a blueprint and a lot of opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you went there, because that was going to be my next question is free versus paid. I think a lot of us that think about getting into public speaking or doing that have probably gone to a conference at some point and seen the speakers that get up there and speak, and we've heard some crazy numbers for some of your top tier speakers, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But like, I love that example of using it as a lead generator. I think that is playing chess in a lot of ways when you're coming to marketing. It's not just like, hey, what's the direct ROI now? And you have this long tail effect. A lot of the things we've done with like getting email addresses from people at the event and then nurturing them along. Like you can do a lot to start building that relationship. So it's not even just what you're closing at the event. It's the long term. But let's say you've got somebody out there that's saying, okay, I do have a business, but also like I want to become a paid professional speaker. Like walk me through a reasonable expectation, because I think entrepreneurs a lot of times tend to be really optimistic and like they really, I believe I can do this, and sky's the limit, all the things. But like, what's a reasonable based on your your experience, like from zero to like your first paid gig to being able to make a decent living at it, plus whatever you have going on with your actual business?
Yeah, in terms of timeline, like again, the answer is it really depends. And so we've seen some speakers who have gone from booking their first gig within a month or a couple of months, and some speakers it takes they can do it quicker, some it takes longer. There was I'll give you two recent examples. I got an email this morning from a guy who joined one of our programs in January, and he said, "Hey, I'm gonna make six figures this year speaking, his first year." And so you have an example like that. There's a couple of weeks ago, I was at the National Speakers Association, their national convention, and so we were there. Our company, the Speaker Lab, had a booth there, and
I was going to say, that sounds like the Super Bowl for you, I feel like.
Yeah, it's definitely a good event for us. And so we did a workshop there as well, but had a guy who came up and said, "Hey, I went through one of your programs last year, and I'm about 2 months away from quitting my job and going all in as a speaker." So you definitely have those that do the work, get after it, and get results. Now, a lot of it I always equate to just how quickly you're going to take action and do the work, So it's kind of, I like to use the analogy of like, how long does it take to lose 10 pounds? Well, it depends, it could take a day or a couple days. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but I guess hypothetically you could do it. It could take, a week or a couple weeks or a month or a year. And maybe 2 years later, you're like, oh man, I'm down 2 pounds. What's happening? Like it ultimately comes down to you and the effort and energy that you are putting into it. So we'll tell people all the time, like, we'll tell you exactly what to do, but like, we can't do the thing for you. And so it's kind of like this morning I go to the gym with a buddy to lift weights. And so this morning we were talking about how, if you have a trainer who's going to tell you like, okay, you need to do this specific exercise, you need to have this many sets and this many reps, and here's exactly the perfect form. Like they can show you all those things, but like they ain't going to lift the weight for you. You have to lift the weight. You have to do the thing. Which is, it's difficult. It's tough. And so we always say like, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. You got to be the one that ultimately does the work.
Is there a personality trait or core value that somebody holds that you see that sets them up for more success, for that almost grit to be able to like persevere and do the work? Or is it sort of just, it depends on the person and there's no real through line for people that tend to make it versus those who bail out too early?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference between those that are treating this like a professional and treating this like an amateur. So an amateur is just kind of like, I don't know, speaking's kind of cool. I wouldn't mind doing a few gigs here or there. And they just kind of kick the tires of it, which is totally fine. But you can't put in amateur effort and expect professional results, right? So before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about pickleball. And I play a lot of pickleball. I love it. It's a stupid game I love to hate. But it's fun to play with a bunch of buddies and get a good sweat on and that sort of thing. But I can't play a couple days a week and not really practice, or I kind of don't really take it that seriously, but just I like to play. and then compare myself against someone who plays, several hours every day, and they're getting coaching and doing drills and practicing and training. It's like, oh, that person's so much better than me. That's not fair. It's like, well, they should be. Like, they're putting so much more energy and effort into it. So I can't expect their results by putting in my effort. So the speakers that just kind of kick the tires on it, like, yeah, if you just want to book a couple of gigs, by all means, you can certainly do that. And that's totally fine. Because what's interesting and I think nice about speaking is it's not a one size fits all. There are speakers that do 50, 75, 100 gigs a year, and speakers that do 5. And it's not that, again, one's better or worse. You just got to decide what makes sense for you. And so if you decide, like, all I want to do is 10 gigs to move the needle in my business, like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You can certainly do that. You just can't kind of like dip your toe in the water and think like, oh, I'm just going to kind of like, half-ass it and think that that's going to magically turn into something significant.
No, that's good. So let's say I'm in. I've got the right mentality. I'm ready to commit to being a professional versus amateur. I love that saying. That's like one of my all-time favorite. You've heard it 20 different ways, but it's so good. And it's funny. I always ask these questions in these interviews, and I almost subconsciously, I think, hope for a new, unique piece of advice that's like almost easier than what you almost know is coming. And it's always the basics, which is, what did you say a second ago? It's not complicated, but it's simple but not easy. Yeah. So that tends to be the answer to so many things. Even when we talk to people about marketing advice, we're like, hey, you should send an email every week to your email list. And they're like, is that really the advice you're giving me? And I'm like, yeah, how you been doing it? And yeah, exactly. And then they're like, well, what about TikTok? And I'm like, well, have you sent any emails lately? Because that's kind of the step one. Let's start there, and then we can get to TikTok after you've sent them every week. So I'm in. I'm in. I'm ready to be a pro, do the things. I've got the right expectations. Like, now it's about finding the gigs that fit my business. Or do you have any advice for finding those events, like whether it's paid or free? Like, that's kind of here and there, but like actually getting in front of the right people, because we're talking about this specifically from a business owner's standpoint.
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is, so inside the Speaker Lab, we teach a 5-step process we call the Speaker Success Roadmap. So it makes a 5-step process, makes the acronym SPEAK, S-P-E-A-K. And so real quick, I can just kind of go through that at a high level, and then we can kind of jump in wherever. But the S is for select a problem to solve. Select a problem to solve, meaning like you got to get really, really clear on answering 2 questions. Number 1 is, who do you speak to? And number 2 is, what problem do you solve for that audience? Who do you speak to? What problem do you solve? So the mistake a lot of speakers make here is we want to spread the net as far and wide as possible and be as big and broad and vague as possible. So who do I speak to? I don't know, man. I speak to humans. I speak to people. My message is for everybody. It's like, yeah, it's not going to work. And what do you speak about? Well, what do you want me to speak about? I can speak about anything. Like, that's not effective either. And so we always say, like, you want to be the steakhouse and not the buffet. The steakhouse and not the buffet. Meaning, like, Chandler, if you and I, we're going for a bite to eat, like, and we're looking for a good steak, like, we have a choice. We could go to a buffet where steak is one of 100 things that they offer, and they're all mediocre. Or we could go to a steakhouse where they do one thing, but they do that one thing really, really well. They don't do tacos. They don't do burgers. They don't do lasagna. Like, they do steak, and that's it. And so it's counterintuitive, because we think the more things that we offer and the bigger we can spread the net, like, the more opportunities we will have. But the reality is like, you want to be really, really good at solving one specific problem for one specific audience. This is the hardest thing for any business owner to do. And again, this isn't exclusive to just speaking. This is true for anybody. You do not want to become this kind of generalist who's kind of like mediocre at a whole bunch of different things, versus just saying like, no, I'm really good at this one specific thing, and I can solve this problem better than anybody else doing this one thing. If you need anything else, that's not me, but this one thing I'm really, really great at. So S, solve one specific problem for one specific audience. The next one, P, is to prepare your talk. Be really, really clear on what's the solution that you are providing to that problem. Next one, the E, is to establish yourself as the expert. So 2 key marketing assets that we teach speakers that you need. Number 1 is a website. So in this day and age, if you don't have a website, you don't exist. It's hard for people to take you seriously. And number 2 is a demo video. Now, what exactly is a demo video? So think about this like a movie trailer. So when you go see a movie, they always show you those trailers. And a trailer is like, basically they're going to take a 90-minute movie. They're going to boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes. The point of the movie trailer and the point of the demo video is to make people want to see more. And so the same thing is true for a event planner, a decision maker. They are in the risk mitigation business, meaning if I'm going to hire you, if I'm going to put you up on stage, if I'm going to give you money, if I'm going to hand you a microphone and let you talk to my audience, I got to have some level of confidence that you're going to do a good job. You're going to be a good fit for what we're looking for. Like maybe you're a great speaker. You're just not what we're looking for. So that demo video gives them some level of confidence and assurance there. So the demo video, website are two important marketing assets. Next part, A, is acquire paid speaking gigs. Acquire paid speaking gigs. Now, the mistake speakers make at this point is we can say, okay, I have my website and my demo video, and now I just kind of sit back and I wait for the phone to ring. And that just doesn't work. Like, you know, your mom is thrilled about your website. She's going to tell both of her friends. Nobody else cares. They just don't. Because people are busy. And so you have to be much more proactive than reactive. Rather than assuming people are going to magically find out about you, you have to find out and determine like what are the events that you could be speaking at? What are the potential clients that you could be talking to? What are the potential organizations, associations, groups, gatherings, whatever it may be? And then starting conversations with them. Speaking, like any other business, is very much a momentum business. The more you speak, the more you speak. But you can't just sit at home and just hope that people magically find out about you. And you can't just like, I posted something on social and nobody responded. Like, yeah, nobody's going to respond to that. Like, you got to, again, be more proactive, do stuff, Chandler, that you're teaching them, emailing people, reaching out to people, staying top of mind with people. Like, those are the things that start to move the needle and build the business. And then the last part of the process, K, is know when to scale. Meaning a lot of people who are interested in speaking are also interested in writing a book or coaching or consulting or doing a course or doing a podcast or doing any number of things. And you can do all the things, you just can't do all the things at once. So something's going to come first, something's going to come last. You got to be really, really clear about how speaking fits into the mix for you. So again, that's kind of the high level overview of what we teach. It's just like speaking gigs don't just magically happen just because you're like, I think speaking would be kind of cool, so I'm just going to add it to my Twitter bio.
Just going to manifest it.
It's just not going to move the needle for you. But you've got to do the work, and by following the process of that speak framework.
I need you to give me like 10 to 50,000% easier advice where I just get to eat a cupcake and I have abs and like I can play pickleball at the professional level. Like I need easier advice, Grant. I don't need the stuff where it's like, hey man, look at the guy in the mirror. He's the problem. So go fix him, and then you'll all of a sudden have all these speaking gigs you're trying to get.
We were talking about losing 10 pounds. What do you got to do to lose 10 pounds? Well, like again, I'm no health, exercise, nutritionist, diet, anybody, but like I know and that, and everybody knows, like you got to do two things if you want to lose 10 pounds. You got to pay attention to what you eat, and you need to exercise. Like that's it. And there's like a crap load of nuance to that, but like pay attention to what you eat. Don't eat bad stuff. Eat good stuff. Exercise. Do get a bunch of steps in. Like lift heavy things.
How many days in a row can you string them together doing those two simple things?
Yeah, it's just like it's so simple, but it's just not easy. And we're looking for like but what about? It's like no, just pay attention to what you eat and exercise. And same thing is true with speaking, with marketing in general, is you just got to do the work. And again, it can be compounding. It can really build upon itself. But in order to build that flywheel, you've got to start getting the momentum going.
Yeah. I mean, that's anything in business, right? It's so funny. Well, like if you talk to any entrepreneur that's like a couple years into the journey, they'll tell you, this is hard. This has been a grind. Like I bet if I asked you, how's the Speaker Lab going now? You're like, it's much easier today than it was 6 years ago when we started, right? It's way easier. It's infinitely easier. I lost my first business, which I've talked on this podcast a ton about. The thing I miss the most is the momentum. Like I don't have people to delegate to at the same level. We don't have the same revenue. We don't have the same brand awareness in our market. Like there's a lot of things you lose when you lose momentum. And so when you string together, like you're talking about, day after day after day after day of doing the basics right, all of a sudden you build that momentum and it starts to pay off. I love that. And it's a good reminder for me because it's something I think we all need to remember all the time because it's just one of those human basic principles that we'll try to forget, I feel like. So I got the gig, I've got the first couple, whatever it is. I'm a big goal setting guy. Like, how do I set goals for that speech? Like, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea just to get up there and deliver. I think there is that, like, give the people what they brought you there for, but also like, how do you set reasonable goals? Or like, how do you tailor your speech to hit reasonable goals? I'm trying to see how to ask this question. Like I want this speech to bring value to the audience, but also like, serve the business that I'm trying to build as well. Like, what are your thoughts around goal setting and like, tailoring a message to match those goals?
Yeah. So a couple thoughts. One would be, let's assume that you are, I don't know, an electrician or something. And so you are an electrician there locally and, you want to use speaking to pick up new clients. Okay. So what you might want to think about then is, again, who are your ideal clients? Who are your ideal customers? So they're probably going to be, let's say, home builders, right? Or people who are looking to buy homes. So something like, home trade shows may be valuable, some local home trade show. So if you're going to be speaking at something like that, it can't just be like, let me tell you why I'm a great electrician and you should hire me. Like, nobody cares about that, right? But here are 5 ways that you could save money on your electricity bill, and on your next home or something like that. Something that like is people are going to be like, that's interesting. That is clearly a problem that if you can solve for me, like, I'm interested in learning more about that, right? So solving, again, one specific problem for one specific audience. And then connecting the dots back of here's how I can help you solve that. Because you can also say, like, here's 5 ways to reduce your electricity bill in your house, or to save on your next build or whatever. But you can also just be like, connect the dots to, hey, if you want me to just come in and take care of this for you, that's something that our company does. And so, like you touched on earlier, Chandler, of using speaking to build your email list is a great thing, because there's going to be people who are sitting in the audience who are like, yes, what you just talked about, I need that solution right now. Take my money. How do I sign up? And there's other people that are like, that's interesting. Let me chew on that, or let me talk to my team, or talk to my spouse, or whatever the nature of it may be. That just kind of gets the wheels spinning for them and puts it on their radar. And maybe they're not ready to do something for 3 months, 6 months, a year, but you're on their radar there. The other thing I would suggest is, especially if you're wanting to use speaking as something that you're doing, semi-frequently, as some part of your business there, is that you don't want to do something like super custom every single time you speak. Okay. So imagine, for example, that you go to a restaurant and you sit down in a restaurant and you ask for a menu, right? And if they say, well, we don't have menus, we can cook whatever you want. It's like, I don't know about that. I don't know how I feel about that, versus a place that says, no, here's a menu. Here's a list of however many items that these are items that we have made hundreds or thousands of times. We're really, really good at these items. Now we can make like a couple little tweaks, but we're not like fundamentally changing, the whole dish or something. And so the same thing is true for a speaker. Is I would recommend that you have 1, 2, maybe 3 kind of key talks that you give, and you may do some like slight customization for them, but it's not like you're starting from scratch every single time. Like, oh man, I gotta give it another talk, and I gotta start from scratch. No, like that's way too much work. Because the other thing is, like, let's go back to the food menu recipe idea. Is when a chef is making an item, this from barbecue land, is that, you figured out how to make something, and you would tweak it and test, okay, we need to cook it a little longer, or we overcooked it, we need to add a little bit more sugar, or it needs a little bit less salt, or we need to let it rest for a little bit longer, or whatever it may be. You've tried it so long to where, like, you get a recipe that's just flawless and perfect, and they know exactly how to make this brisket, and we know exactly how to slice it, and we know all the nuances and ins and outs of it. Like, when a customer comes to the restaurant, that's what they want. Don't just like, we're trying something different today. Hopefully this works. Would you like to be a guinea pig? It's
Those
like,
are
no,
called
I want
specials, and they're limited runs.
Exactly. Like, you want the thing that, like, no, this is what we're known for. Like, that's what someone wants. The same thing is true for a speaker. Is like, you don't want to be starting from scratch every time. You want to say, no, like, we're really, really good at this. And that's what that presentation is.
Grant, I wish we were friends about 8 months ago. So one of my goals for 23 was to incorporate public speaking for IB marketing as like one of our acquisition channels. And we started getting these, we hustled. I read your book, The Successful Speaker, which I recommend everybody get. We'll make sure to link it up for everybody to check it out. But I got these gigs, and all of a sudden I skipped the chapter where they talked about, or where you talked about having a specialty, and, like, delivering a consistent speech. It's much easier over and over and over again. And I did 3 or 4 different custom speeches so far just this year, and every time it took probably 40 hours total to whittle down a 45-minute presentation. And it's such good advice. Like, get the one thing, deliver it really, really well, versus like I was trying to bite off more than I could really chew, and like I had this feeling of like, I got to say yes to everybody because, we'll never get another gig again, which of course isn't the truth, and just ended up causing a giant pain. And honestly, it affected the business a little bit, because then I was all of a sudden potentially dropping balls over here with the actual company, the thing that pays the bills. And this new thing we're testing, public speaking, all of a sudden is not, it's way more time than it should be from an R&D standpoint. So I love that. That's great. So one of the things so I've been to a ton of conferences, and like one of the things that drives me crazy is that a lot of people will pay for pitch slots, and then you'll get 10 to 15 minutes to get up there and talk about their business. Like, how do you recommend people get on stage and, is it and deliver content that actually provides value and also ends up with the person wanting to learn more about your business? Do you have like one thought on that?
Yeah, I think that a mistake that sometimes speakers will make in that type of situation is that they want to almost like, I have. Let's go back to the electrician. Here's 5 steps or 5 tips that are going to help save your money, but I'm going to only give you 3 of them, and you got to opt in. Like, I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I would rather over deliver because people are smart and they're going like, dang, that was really good. Like, I want to learn more. So don't feel like you have to be overly pitchy and obnoxious in that way, because that just rubs people the wrong way. But if people are confident that you're able to provide the solution to the problem that they have, if you can describe the problem better than they can and better than they understand, they're going to be confident that you're able to help solve that. So I think thinking about it that way, and I'll also just say like those type of slots are not necessarily bad slots. Like, they get a bad rap of like, that sounds awful. I never want to, pay to speak. That's stupid. I want them to pay me. My content's so good. It's like, yeah, I get all that. But at the same time, like if you're, it's like Facebook ads, as a company, we spend a lot of money on Facebook ads and online advertising. And I know like, okay, if I can put $1 in and I get $1.25, $1.50, $2 out, like how many more dollars can I put in and keep getting more out? So if it costs you X amount to get a speaking slot, but like, all right, I'm really confident that the right customers, clients are going to be in that audience, and that the average customer client is going to be worth X to me, and it's going to be significantly more than what I paid. Like, that seems like a no-brainer trade.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like that a lot. All right, so this is one of the fun questions I like to ask. Everybody always asks for like, what's the newest tip or the thing that's you're most excited about? And I want to do that, but I want to start with what's the most overrated tip or tactic or piece of advice that you hear in the marketplace when it comes to public speaking or getting paid or getting booked or any of those things? Like, what's overrated in your world?
Social media, I think is a big one. A lot of people just kind of, I post or I try to build some social media following. I think that that's going to move the needle. Like, most of the time it just doesn't, just not going to make any difference. And so, yeah, I'd say that that's a big one. Cause again, it feels, doing something like social media feels like I'm playing business. I'm doing something that's kind of like tangential to speaking, but it's not actually making a difference. It's kind of like, let's go back to if I want to lose 10 pounds and I need to pay attention to what I eat and I need to exercise. So instead of actually doing the work, I'm going to pick out like really nice running shoes that are just, and all the accessories. And I'm going to get really, really nice cooking utensils so that I feel confident. I'm going to get me a Costco membership. I'm doing things that are like in the solar system of it, but like I'm not actually doing the work. And to me, that's a bit of what social media is.
Yeah, especially in a world, so to be fair, I separate YouTube out from social media. So like YouTube is this evergreen, beautiful thing that I love. And, but social media, all the other things, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, we talk to clients. We're like, look, before you commit to those platforms, what you should know is that they are bottomless black holes. And sometimes you can get business out of them sometimes. And that's usually
Totally.
18 months down the road. Like if you're not committed to being in a black hole with zero return for 18 months and you're posting every single day and you're in it every day for 18 months, like just don't even get started. Do what Grant's telling you to do. Email people, call people, do other activities to hit your business goals. The problem with social media in general, and this is just me putting my marketing hat on for a second, is that it is a never-ending hamster wheel that if you're not in there participating every single day, then you're not ever going to get any sort of benefit out of it. And that's why paid ads are so effective, like you're talking about, because it's like forcing the algorithms just to keep showing your content every single day in people's feeds. And that's a big myth that we have to deal with a ton with people like, hey, I think I should get on, Instagram Reels. I heard that was a big thing, and TikTok again is huge, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you need to be like, do other things, like, write a blog, like, focus on SEO, like call somebody, do email, back to email,
Yeah.
do something else.
Well, let me give you one other quick story. I remember several years ago, there was I was interested in real estate investing, and I didn't really know much about it, but I was intrigued by it. And I have a good friend who does a ton of real estate investing. It's his whole business and career. And so I remember hanging out with him, and I was asking him, I was like, okay, you have all these different types of real estate investing, right? You have single family homes and multifamily and apartments and short-term rentals, Airbnb, raw land, mobile home parks, on and on the list goes, right? And I said, which one is best? And he said, yes. And I was like, that's not helpful. What do you mean? It's like, what you find is there's no one that's doing all those things, but you can find anybody who's killing it with one of those things. And so you're going to find people who are like, they are crushing it with raw land, and they are crushing it. Meaning, like, there are people who are crushing it with social media. They are absolutely building a very successful business. And so it's easy when, either of us to say like, like social media is a bit of it's a black hole. It's that treadmill. I don't know if you want to get on that. But people are like, but what about fill in the blank? They're doing it. It's like, yeah, but just like, let's play this out. Is that the type of business that you want to have? And is that really the type of model? And are you willing to put in that kind of work for the period of time before you start to see any level of results from posting on something, constantly? So it's not to say like social media is evil and all that. Like, I just don't think it's the quickest, best, most effective way to find and book speaking gigs.
I understand exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about like people are like, hey, I want to be a speaker. Like, let me start promoting myself. PR would say, start talking about yourself on Instagram and da-da-da. But it's 100%. There's more effective ways to get those first 10 gigs booked.
Sure.
I totally agree. So what's the tactic that's not talked about enough, or the thing that you see yourself constantly, bringing up in conversations when you're talking to different students at the Speaker Lab?
Yeah, I think one thing we touched on earlier is that speaking for free is, I think, can be a good thing. I think there's just a big misconception that speaking for free is a bad thing. And so speaking for free is okay as long as you know why you're doing it. Don't just do something out of the goodness of your heart. Like, you're providing something of value, you need to receive something of value in exchange. And so if you are that client, or if you're that student who, if you're that speaker who has clients or customers or students in the audience, then you know that they're going to be interested in your product or service. Then it may make sense for you to speak for free at something. And the value that you may be generating for your business may be way more than what the event was going to pay you, or did pay you, or didn't pay you, or whatever. So speaking for free is okay. Again, just be really, really clear on why you're doing it.
Yeah. I second that. We've gotten business already just from doing 3 chamber events, free local things, didn't have to travel. Not sexy. Don't look good on a social media story. I drove down to the Spring Hill Chamber, and I love those guys, but there was not.
But they work.
But it worked. It did. That advice I co-sign 100%. So the Speaker Lab, when did you guys found that? Is that just you that started that, or do you guys have co-founders there with that?
No, just me. I started it in 2016. And so, yeah, we've got about 45 people on the team now, totally a virtual company. So we're talking before, I'm based here locally in the Nashville area, but yeah, we've got team, I think in 26 different states right now, and in 3 or 4 countries right now. So yeah, we're all over the place.
That's cool. That's amazing. Yeah, we have you back on to talk about leadership stuff, because I would love to know how you're leading a virtual team like that. We're trying to build the same sort of thing with HighBeam virtually, so it's a unique challenge, that's for sure. So when you guys set out, it sounded like you were doing the thing already, and then at some point people started coming up to you asking for help and whatnot. Like, how is that sort of the problem you're trying to solve with the Speaker Lab? Is just helping people take the same journey you did, or has it evolved over the last 8 years?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So there's definitely that's a core of what we do today. Speaking is this kind of this mysterious black box. A lot of people who are interested in speaking, they've done some speaking, they've been invited to some stuff, some word of mouth, some referrals, some stuff's fallen in their lap. Maybe they've been paid a time or two, and they're like, that's fun, that's enjoyable, it's beneficial, moves the needle, I would love to do more of it. I don't know what to do now. It's like the business model is not sit and wait for someone to call you. Like, that doesn't work, regardless of your business, whether you're a speaker or whatever you may do. And so we wanted to really try to demystify it. And speaking is one of those industries that's been around for longer than either of us have been alive. It survived recessions, depressions, wars, pandemics, 9/11. Like, it's just not going anywhere. And so people will always be, regardless of what happens with technology or AI or pandemics or politics or whatever, like, people still want to gather and have humans connecting with other humans, and speaking is a great way to do that. And so there's going to be speakers who are going like, I don't know what I don't know. I'm not clear on who I would even speak to or how much I would charge. I don't know how any of this works. Like, yeah, there's a lot of those speakers that we work with. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have a lot of speakers who maybe they're doing six figures, multiple six figures, and they're going, okay, things are working for me. And instead of charging, 5,000, I want to go to 10,000. And instead of doing 30 gigs, I want to get to 50 gigs. And I'm on the road a lot. And so how do I create a course, or how do I do some more consulting, or how do I, instead of trying to get 50 individual clients, how do I get 10 clients that I can go deep with? So we have those students that we work a lot with as well. So it really, kind of depends on what you're looking for as it relates to building and growing your speaking business. But ultimately, if you have you want to impact people with your message and make an income from that, then that's what we do at the Speaker Lab.
That's awesome. So maybe that answers this next question then, which is, I think about this from a marketer standpoint all the time, which is like, you can't serve everybody, sort of like we've already talked about here. You have to have a specific problem. So, when do you recommend somebody just stay in their own lane and just sort of do this on their own versus like actually get involved with you guys at the Speaker Lab?
Yeah. I mean, it ultimately depends on how fast you want to go. So you mentioned the book, The Successful Speaker. So 5 steps for booking gigs, getting paid, building your platform. We talked about that 5-step speak framework earlier. You can take all that, you can listen to it, you can apply it, you can grab the book for $20 or 15, however much a book costs, and you can read through it, you can implement it, and you can apply it. We did a podcast interview, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, with a guy who's like, I stumbled across your podcast, I listened to it, I listened to every single episode, I applied it, and I just quit my job, and I'm going all in as a speaker. And he was crushing it as a speaker. And he'd never paid us a dime. He just listened to hundreds of free hours of the podcast, right? That's totally fine as well, right? So where I know that like our coaching and training help is how do you best customize it to you? So I'm reading through the book and I'm thinking through like, okay, I need to get clear on who I speak to, but I'm torn between this audience and this audience. Can someone just help me process that and think this through? Or I want to talk about this topic. Is that even a thing? And what are other people talking about? And I know I need to build my website, but I'm trying to figure out, like, I know I need to have this, this, and this on there, but, should it say this or that? Those type of things where it's hard to read the label from inside the jar. And so having someone that can come alongside you, walk with you through that process is part of what that is. The other thing is like one of the things that we do is there's several done for you components. So we touched on earlier, like you need a website, you need a demo video, and those things can be intimidating for people. Like they were for me. I don't know how to make a website. I don't know how to make a demo video. And so we actually build those for our clients and students. And so we work with you to build those out. We find speaking leads specifically for you. We have a software internally that we provide to our students to help them to find leads. And so there's several things like that where like you can go at it alone. You can be successful. But if you want some additional help, support, and go a little bit faster to get there, then that's what we do.
No, I love that. Well, we highly recommend everybody go check these guys out. I love the book and, the Speaker Lab themselves, great webinars. Grant's podcast is amazing. I highly recommend everybody go check it out. We appreciate you guys listening. Grant, thank you so much for joining me this week. We will see you all next time.